سارة، صار عندي حادث سيارة واتصلت بالمحامي كاجي.
قصدين أنتي المحامي كاجي؟
يعني هذا المكتب اللي قالوا عليه أكبر مكتب محاماة عربي كلداني بأمريكا، كاجي؟
لا أنا محامي بالكاجي لا. أنا أعرف لورنس، هو قال لي كاجي لا.
أنا أعرف العائلة زين، يقولوها قاجي.
بعد أي حادث سيارة اتصلوا بيا، أنا محامي لورنس قاجي. 248-702-6641 248-702-6641.
أعزائي المستمعين، أهلا وسهلا بكم في برنامج جديد للمحامي لورنس قاجي. معي في الاستوديو المحامي لورنس قاجي. Welcome, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you so much for having us this week.
Welcome, Mr. John Schroeder.
Thank you so much. It's always wonderful to be here and wonderful to be back.
وطبعا العزيزة الباراليغال الأخت العزيزة تمارا، أهلا وسهلا بك.
أهلا وسهلا بالجميع.
طبعا ما أعرف اليوم ايش راح يكون حديثنا، لأنه احنا طبعا اختصاص إصابات شخصية. المحامي لورنس والمحامي جان شرودر والستاف اللي ويا المحامين وأيضا الموظفين الموجودين كلهم شغلهم الإصابات الشخصية، لكن أي واحد عنده أي شغلة في كل الأقسام بالنسبة للمحاماة هم يقومون بها، لكن اختصاصهم الأصلي هو الإصابات الشخصية. دائما اللي يحب يتصل بهم على مكتبهم هو 248-702-6641، واللي يحب يتصل بينا على الهواء يسأل أي سؤال استفسار يقدر يتصل بينا على 586-825-2015 586-825-2015. راح نبدي اليوم بأي موضوع راح نبدي اليوم؟ ما أعرف لأنه جيت رأسا.
صحيح.
I think we're going to continue our conversation from last week.
Yes. راح نكملها اليوم
موضوعنا مع الأسبوع الماضي.
نعم. واللي كنا نتكلم به على بأنه شنو الأشياء اللي تزيد واللي ترفع من قيمة القضية، وشنو الأشياء اللي لازم ندير بالنا عليها واللي تسوي القضية ركيكة همين.
يعني القضية تنجح، بس شنو القضايا اللي تخليها بعد تنجح أكثر؟
بالضبط.
هذا والقضايا الركيكة طبعا والمستمسكات الركيكة للقضية.
صحيح.
فاليوم راح يكملون يعني you will continue today.
We are going to continue today from our subject from last week. We end up, I think, by the...
So we were talking about the common ways that insurance companies deny the claims.
Yes.
And we talked a lot about rescission.
Yes.
And I think we'd left off just sort of at the beginning of discussing independent medical evaluations. But just to back up a tiny bit, if any callers have ever had insurance claims denied, if they've ever had...
Or just had trouble with any insurance claims.
Or just had any trouble, we'd really love to hear your stories. Because there's a lot of different things a lot of different stories that I've heard from people for over many years, and they're really interesting. And sometimes we can delve in and help people figure out what's going wrong. So
هم تكلمنا من الأسبوع الماضي شنو هي الأشياء اللي الإنشورنس تنتبه عليها وتحاول توقف القضية.
نعم.
توقفها، ما تسدها بس توقفها. أكو عدة يعني نقاط وحكينا بها. وصلنا واحدة من النقاط بأنه إذا الانشورنس يدزك إلى الطبيب مالتهم واللي هو يسموه independent medical exam والمختصر مالته هو IME. همنا نحب نذكر المستمعين أي أحد عنده أي مشكلة بالقضية مالته أو عنده الانشورنس رافضة تدفع له أو أي شيء، يتصل بينا للمكتب أو يتصل هنا للستوديو اليوم.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is actually, John, my favorite kind of denial or
yeah, in a way it's mine too.
Yeah, because in my opinion, it's just my opinion, but it is the easiest thing to get over.
Yeah. And yet it happens on every case, almost every single case, doesn't it?
Right. I mean, just being honest, I mean, we generally don't give too much
Wait.
weight in terms of settling it or in terms of deciding whether to go to trial or not to these IME reviews and reports. I mean, just being honest, in practice, we just don't.
Yeah. So I think we should back up a little bit and say, what is an independent medical evaluation and how it works in the context of a motor vehicle accident.
Yeah.
So, when someone is involved in a motor vehicle accident, typically they're injured, right? And they either get physical or mental injuries, or maybe both, right? They could suffer from anxiety and depression. Perhaps they've got broken bones. Perhaps they just have muscle tissue damage. Who knows? You could have disc herniations in your back. There's a lot of different injuries that you can sustain when you're in a motor vehicle accident. And one of the claims, as we've talked about many times on this radio program, is everyone is entitled to have their medical bills paid for out of their personal injury protection insurance policy.
هذا اليوم راح نتكلم عليه بأنه الفحص الطبي المستقل عن طريق الانشورنس اللي هو independent medical exam. هذا تقريبا 99% من القضايا الشخص لازم يفوت بهالمرحلة، لازم يروح للطبيب. وإحنا جدا جدا يعني نسند هالشيء بأنه لازم يروح للطبيب مالتهم، لأنه هم دائما يرفضون، بس أكو حالات ما يرفضون. بالضبط، بس هاي واحدة من الحالات اللي يقدرون يوقفون القضية.
نعم.
أوكي.
لكن إذا راحوا للطبيب مالهم كشف تفرق إن شاء الله.
And so they do have a right to this under the law. So because you're putting your your medical in the case and kind of part of kind of our claims and stuff like that, they do have a right to have an independent medical exam.
Right.
And we'll kind of go over, like I said, why this is my favorite sort of denial and that sort of thing.
وهي هاي واحدة من الأشياء القانونية. الانشورنس إلها حق بأنه تبعث كل متأذي كل شخص كل كلاينت إلى هذا الطبيب مالتهم. هاي واحدة من الأشياء اللي الانشورنس تستعملها حتى ضد القضية، حتى توقف القضية وتقول أنت مثلا وصلت إلى الحد الأقصى للعلاج وبعد رجعت للحد الطبيعي مالتك وبعد ما تحتاج.
So just to back up a little bit. So generally how the IME cutoffs work is and I'm just giving an example of cases that I've seen 1,000 times. But very popular example. So usually our clients, we talked last week about the rescission issues, making sure that you have everyone on the policy, making sure that you have all of your cars listed, all that good stuff that you need to kind of get through the initial stages of making a claim. Then, they open up the claim and you start treating usually. You start, let's say you needed physical therapy or you needed a doctor, whatever the case may be, a chiropractor. So
now your physical and or mental condition is at issue in the claim.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So generally, our clients start treating for their injuries and, tomorrow maybe you can chime in, but usually we see this about 3 to 6 months into the case.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is between 6 to 9 months. It depends from 3 to 9 months.
And I would even posit there are some companies, for example, and I'm thinking in particular bus companies who will do an IME sometimes right away. They'll request them in the first few weeks of a claim, the second an injury is reported.
But normally speaking, right, we do see them, I would say maybe 3 to 9 months
into
the case.
Yes.
And essentially what they'll do is they'll send a letter to us or the client, depending on if they're represented or not. And they'll say that, simply that we need a medical exam and it's an independent medical exam. And, but I'll kind of go into why it's not. And, they'll give you a date and time and you just, you have to show up at this doctor's office and you don't get to pick the doctor. They get to pick the doctor.
Yes.
So, you can see that there's some room for, we'll just leave it at that. But,
well, and one of their rules, we have to make sure they never seen that doctor before. There's no relationship between the doctor,
Sure.
doctor and our client.
Yeah. And then I'll kind of go into why this is my favorite kind of
denial.
yeah.
مثل ما قلنا هاي واحدة من الأشياء الانشورنس تحاول توقف القضية، وهاي أحسن دينايل بالنسبة لنا، أحسن توقيت لأنه غير نحكي بعدين بيها بالتفصيل. بس بأنه قانونيا الانشورنس له حق يبعث اي كلاينت مسوي على الانشورنس كليم، يجي للزبون او لنا رساله تقول لنا بانه لازم هذا الشخص لازم يروح للطبيب فلان، ومو احنا نختار الطبيب ولا الزبون، الانشورنس يختار الوقت، المكان والزمان، كل شيء يختار هو، واحنا علينا لازم نسوي هالشيء. واحنا دائما نشجع بانه لازم يروحون.
Yeah. So before, I want to give you an example, and you tell me before we even get into all the details if you think this is a fair process or if you think this is a good process. Because, and I'm asking you because you could be a jury on a case. Anyone could be a jury. Okay, so tell me what you think about this. So our client goes to an IME. They get a physical exam, and they answer a bunch of questions. It's usually about a 10 to 30 minute exam. And then I would say what would you say the percentages that they would get?
So there were actually some statistics on this that came out in California, and that doesn't apply to Michigan, but I'm very confident it's very similar. And in the California study, there were some 90% plus results where the independent medical evaluators came in favor of the insurance company.
So a client goes to see an IME doctor, and this is
insurance doctor.
They call it independent, but the insurance companies are the one that are picking these doctors
and paying for those doctors
and paying for the doctors.
Who paid?
The insurance company. And these doctors can make thousands of dollars on one exam.
In one case.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, for 1 hour or less than an hour.
Break it up a little bit.
Yeah. طبعا الشخص
right now I want to give Sahar an example.
Yes.
I want to ask him if he thinks this is
but
fair.
it's okay. She can translate.
المتضرر طبعا راح يبدي يروح للطبيب للثيرابي اللي يسوي فحوصات. فالانشورنس تريد تشوف هل هذا صحيح، تحاول تدزه الى الطبيب الانشورنس اللي هم يختارون. المحامي لورنس عنده سؤال لك، كأنما أنت راح تطب المحكمة ولازم تصير من المحلفين، من هيئة المحلفين. فريد نشوف أنت شنو رأيك، لأنه تقريبا 99% من عندها تجي بأنه يقطعوك، مو من صالحك، من صالح الانشورنس، يعني الانشورنس هي تدفع لها الطبيب المبالغ حتى تشوف شو اسمه الزبون. دائما يكون بين 10 دقائق
ساعة ونص.
no 10 دقائق. I will say half an hour. إذا بها مالت يعني أشياء يعني غير فحوصات،
أشعات وشغلات.
ماكو شحات.
But generally speaking, it's usually a quick exam.
It is كلش سريع. هو
سريع
جدا.
هذا الطبيب.
دائما يطلبوا الانشورنس بالقضية مالتك بين 3 أشهر من القضية إلى 9 أشهر.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Okay. So you attend the IME exam, and then the doctor writes up a report for the adjuster, and John just said there are statistics that show in California there was a 90%.
Over 90%.
I was going to say
it was over 90%.
I was going to say it's probably about 95%.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. It's over 90%.
90% plus based on some statistics in California. Right. Okay. So then they write a letter to the adjuster saying that our client has reached maximum medical improvement, and pretty much they are.
They don't want to pay more.
They're in the same position as they were before the accident. So why would we pay anymore? And then they essentially will give you a date as to when the cutoff will be.
What do you want me to
ask? I'll answer the question. Yes. I just want to break it up so the listeners can see exactly where I'm going with this.
So
insurance.
لا
So the letter and the cutoff is what we're talking about.
يس توصل للانشورنس
نعم.
رسالة
إيه.
بأنه من الطبيب اللي راح شاف الزبون.
نعم.
الزبون كان نسيت الاسم الزبون.
التابع لي.
بأنه هذا الشخص وصل إلى الحد الأقصى للطبابة وهو صار رجع لحالته الطبيعية
اللي كان بها.
نعم. المحامي هسه يريد يسألك السؤال.
So the letter pretty much says that effective this date, we're not going to be paying for any more medical benefits.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I'm going to just give an example.
Yes.
هذا كمثال.
Okay.
وهذا
Now,
المثال
what's your question
وهذا
now?
المثال
Exactly.
Okay.
فوق 90% التقارير
ترفض.
ترجيب مرفوضة ومن اليوم اللي يكتبون الرسالة لنا وبعد ما يدفعون على هاي القضية.
So Lawrence, that seems totally fine to me, right? I mean, if I'm the insurance company, right, I've got a right and a duty to make sure that this client is only treating for things related to the motor vehicle accident. I'm only have to pay in my policy. What's the problem?
What's the
It
problem?
seems-
he went
see,
back
the
to
problem-
his normal
The problem
life,
seems to be a little convenient for you.
Well,
if you're
I
an insurance
mean,
company.
maybe, but well, I guess I would add this. The question here is, does the individual injured party's doctor say, in your example, does their doctor say they still need treatment?
Well, that's
And
what I'm
do they-
getting.
and do they
that-
still
that's,
need
That's going
treatment?
to be part of my question.
Right.
So my question is, Sahar.
Yes.
Okay. So, Sahar, do you think it's fair that my client has been treating for 6 months with the same doctor, same physical therapy, wherever they're treating? They've seen this doctor maybe 20 times, right?
Yeah.
Doctor says that my client's injured and that they need more treatment. So
Oh.
there's a disagreement now.
Your doctor.
The client's doctor.
The client's doctor, he said
He says he needs more treatment.
Yes. And their doctor said.
I've seen him 20 times.
Yes.
I've been with him for the last 6 months.
Yes.
This one doctor saw him one time
In
for
10
10
minutes.
minutes, and he said, "You don't need any more treatment." But our doctor is saying that they
yes.
do need more
If
treatment.
I'm,
It's and
Mark-
let me just continue.
Yeah.
It's the same exact doctors that we see on every single case. So the insurance companies pick the same doctors over and over and over again
for all cases.
for all cases. And essentially, it's the same. I've seen almost the same report on a lot of cases. It seems like they're just copying and pasting some of this stuff.
This is what,
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm with
So
you.
my question is, do you think it's fair that a
No,
client
it's
gets cut off by the insurance company based on these circumstances?
It's not
Tell me.
because because his doctor, he saw him like he visited him 20 times. He know all the details about his.
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, but
So I'm gonna
Lawrence,
repeat our question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي قال بأنه إحنا الزبون مالتنا يروح للطبيبة ورا 6 أشهر بهال6 أشهر خلال هال6 أشهر شايف الطبيب لمرات عديدة. الثيرابي يروحون 2 أو 3 بالأسبوع. التقارير الطبية تجي بأنه الزبون بعده متضرر
يحتاج
وبعده يحتاج. بينما الانشورنس تبعثهم نفس الطبيب دائما واذا والطبيب يشوفهم من 10 الى 15 دقيقه وهذا الطبيب على غفله يقول لا هم ما يحتاجون اي شيء.
نعم.
فالسؤال المحامي هل هذا انت كجوري
نعم.
كمحلف هل هذا يعني
fair? No, it's not.
It's not fair.
It's not fair.
So you see why these are my favorite kind of cases, right? Because when I go in front of a jury and this is the only issue in the case, the jury is going to side with us.
Well, now, I have to play devil's advocate.
If I'm jury, I'll be with you.
Us.
Yeah.
Now, Lawrence, I've got to play devil's advocate again, okay? On behalf of the innocent insurance companies here.
You are.
That works for the insurance company.
You are working for insurance.
Of course, I agree with Lawrence. But just to play devil's advocate, so if I'm the insurance company, right? What I see a client or Lawrence's client, right? And they've been treating for 6 months and they aren't better. So I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, why aren't they better yet? So I'm going to send my doctor to go look at him and see what's wrong. What's so wrong with
10
that?
minutes.
Well, what is
10 minutes,
them?
how can he know?
Yeah.
In 10 minutes, how can he know?
Well,
this?
see, and that's the trick. And that's actually why I agree with Lawrence, is because part of the problem that we have with independent medical evaluators is they're not really independent, right? Number one, they're performing an evaluation, and get this, they are not creating a physician-patient relationship. at all. What does that mean? That means they're not liable for medical malpractice. They're not liable to even give the client correct information. Okay. All they have to do in accordance with their contract with the insurance company is write an evaluation that says whether or not they believe they require treatment related to the accident.
Okay, the insurance doctor will see all the documents, everything.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe yes.
So that's the other trick, is sometimes they're operating on incomplete information. They're only provided the information that the insurance company wants to give them. This is true. That means, so they will say, hey, I need some documentation on this client.
But
the insurance company will say, well, here's a police report.
The insurance, they know, they have the documentation.
So, but what information are they giving them is the question. Sometimes they give them all of it. Sometimes they don't.
Oh, you know.
Sometimes they don't have a complete set of records.
Okay.
Even if they do, they say that they reviewed all the records. Sometimes I find inconsistencies
I don't think they touch it.
Yeah, for with their letter that they sent to the adjuster, I find inconsistencies, and it makes me believe that they didn't read all the medical records.
Well, I can tell you for a fact, in my experience, I have deposed independent medical evaluation doctors, okay, for trial. So I've done trial depositions many times. And when I review their report, I look at the records that they've reviewed. They usually list what they've reviewed. And I can tell you that in about 9 out of 10 depositions, I will ask them about at least one, if not multiple documents. And I say, have you seen this document? And their answer will be no. And I say, well, have you seen this document? And their answer will be no again. And I say, so you did your evaluation and you based it on this set of documents. Is that correct? And they will say, yes. And I say, so you would agree with me that you didn't have these documents. Is that correct? And they said, yes. And then I say, okay, so you would agree with me you did not, and you still don't have a complete record of the injuries for this client. Is that correct?
That you fight for your client.
But it never changes their mind, does it?
They change?
No.
They will not change their mind, but our goal is not necessarily to change the guy who's been paid by the insurance company to render an opinion. I'm not trying to change his mind. I'm trying to change your mind as the juror, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's yeah. الطبيب اللي يبعثوه الانشورنس، الزبون اللي يبعثوه للطبيب، هذا الطبيب لازم ما يسوي اي علاقه مع الزبون كطبيب ومريض. يعني شلون انت عندك طبيب عائله لو تروح يعني العلاقه الطبيه بين الطبيب والمريض ممنوعه. ما حتى اذا يكتب اي تقرير غلط هو ما حد يقدر يسوي عليه اي محكمه او لو سوت يرفعون عليه قضيه. الاشياء اللي يكتبها هو ما مجبور بانه يكتبها صحيحه. هنا تجي بانه انت تروح الطبيب تشوفه لمده 6-7 اشهر، وهنا تجي الى طبيب تشوفه 10 دقائق حتى ما يلزمك. امشي ما يفحص ما يلزمك، ما امشي دنج سوي هيك وخلاص. والتقرير بانه انت ما بشي. عده مرات المحامين مسوين
شو على الطبيب؟
على الطبيب لا، مو هسه قلت ممنوع. ماكو، لانه ماكو علاقه طبيه ومع المريض بين الطبيب والمريض.
سووا على الانشورنس بس. بالضبط.
بس نقدر ناخذ الافاده مال الطبيب، هاي نقدر يعني. نعم. وهاي عده مرات مسويها المحامين. وواحده من الاسئله المحامين يقولون هل انت، لانه الانشورنس مو دائما تعطي التقارير الطبيه كلها للطبيب
العفو
للطبيب. فالطبيب ايش عنده فشي جدا مرات ما عنده كل شيء اصلا. واذا عنده حتى هوايه تقارير من تجي ما متطابقه ويا التقارير الطبيه مال الزبون. فمن يحجون وياهم بالافاده يقول له هل شفت انت هذا التقرير؟ لا. شفت هذا التقرير؟ لا. ومرات الانشورنس ما تاخذ كل التقارير الطبيه، ما عندها كلها. هذا يبين بانه هذا وحده من الاشياء اللي الانشورنس تحاول توقف القضيه، بس هي من صالح المحامي، لانه هاي الشغله بانه اكو هوايه اشياء احنا نقدر نثبتها عن طريق العمل مالتنا والتقارير الطبيه واحنا تواصلنا مع الزبون ونعرف شنو الاضرار اللي بي هاي كلها بانه نوقف ويا الزبون ونقدر يعني تمشي قضيه.
طبعا بالنسبه للاخوه المستمعين مشاهدين اللي عندهم قضيه يعني تشبه هذه او اي قضيه اخرى فشلوا في انه ينجحون بها، يقدرون يتصلون بالمكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي، يتكلمون اللغه العربيه الكلدانيه وطبعا اعتيادي الانجليزيه. تتصلون بمكتب قاجي لو فيرم على 248-702-6641 او تتصلون هنا على الهواء تسالون اي سؤال طالما معنا المحامي لورنس والمحامي جان شرودر وايضا اختنا تمارا. تتصلون على 586-825-2015 ويجاوبوكم. استشاراتهم دائما طبعا مجانيه، واي كيس عندكم اي قضيه عندكم عند المحامي لورنس قاجي ما يقبض من عندكم any dollar or any cent الا ما تخلص القضيه. ذاك الوقت هو بالنسبه له ياخذ بعد المصاريف يعني ياخذ الحصه مالته. لكن اكو في عده حلقات تتكلم المحامي لورنس قال احنا اكو قضايا نصرف عليها 40-50 الف دولار ويعني ما ناخذ دولار واحد من الكلاينت الا اذا خلصت القضيه وفازت.
صحيح.
John, you're talking about trial depositions. I actually started a trial deposition one time without even saying hello. I asked the doctor directly, when did you start treating my client? And it was kind of like, wait, what? When did you start treating him? You got to remember, these doctors are not trying to make you better. Mm-hmm. Their main goal is to report back to the insurance company.
Well, I know the answer to that question, but the listeners don't. And the answer to that question was, I never started treating that client because, again, independent medical evaluators don't treat the people that they're being asked to evaluate.
This doctor is not trying to make my client better. Is that right?
That's right.
That's right. واحدة من المحكمة من صارت المحامي لورنس أول ما بدأ القضية حتى أصلا ما سلم على الطبيب. أول شيء سأله أنت إيش وقت يعني درت بالك على مالتي الزبون، إيش وقت شفته، إيش وقت داريته. هم ما يدارون ولا بس يشوفون بأنه هذا لأنه الإنشورة دازتهم. قال له أنا ما داريته ولا اخذت يعني ما اشوفه ولا هو المريض مالتي
ما براجع لي
بالضبط. فهو مو طبيبه فما يقدر يكتب هذا التقرير. يعني مو من صالحه يكتب، يعني صالحنا إنه ولصالح القضيه ولصالح الزبون.
Now, interestingly, there were some major reforms, right, in 2020 to this particular statute. And before the reform, insurance companies would even use really different specialties that weren't related to what the client was treating with. Sometimes they didn't even use licensed physicians. I actually know attorneys who told me that they had cases where a PhD, as in like a doctor of psychology, did an evaluation on their client for their physical injuries and gave a denial. And this was such a problem that the insurance companies were, at least in my opinion, were abusing this system, that when the reform came around, they now require that the physicians be in the same specialty, at least, this is good, as the treating physician that the client is using. And if the physician that the client is using is board certified, then the independent medical evaluator also has to be board certified.
قبل ما يتغير القانون بال2019 كانوا يدزون الزبون إلى مرات هم مو أطباء، يعني مو طبيب
انجري مالح حوادث،
لا مو متخصص، طبيب متخصص اللي هو اللي يسويه. يدزوه إلى مثلا واحد مخلص دكتوراه. الدكتوراه غير شكل عن الطبيب. صح. الدكتوراه مخلص مثلا هو سايكولوجي، علم نفس، ويخلون يشوفوا الزبون وهو ما يعرف، يعني هذا مو شغله بالضبط. فورا هذا التغيير لازم الانشورنس بعد قرروا لازم يشوفهم طبيب اخصائي مثلا طبيب عائلة، طبيب أعظام، طبيب جراحة، طبيب مالت
يعني اختصاص.
نعم. بالضبط. فلازم عنده هو بأنه مو بس PhD، بس هو أنه طبيب وليس فقط دكتور.
نعم، مو بس دكتور.
And believe it or not, there's yet another requirement they had to add in because of this, again, in my opinion, sort of an abuse of the system. And that is that during the year preceding the examination, so if the independent medical evaluator is examining a client, right, or an injured party, during the year prior, the examining physician must have devoted a majority of their time to clinical practice or the instruction of students. In other words, they can't just be a full-time independent medical evaluator, because what a lot of insurance companies were doing, they were taking these physicians who didn't practice medicine anymore. Basically, they were just doing evaluations. And again, shock and awe, when you're getting 100% of your money from the insurance company, guess how often those evaluations said the client was horribly injured? Not frequently.
واحدة من الأشياء اللي هم كانت قبل بأنه كان وراء 2020 غيروا القانون بأنه الطبيب اللي يشوف الزبون المتضرر لازم ممارس بأنه يروح يدخل دورات ولو يدرس طلاب حتى يكون دائما هو بالسيستم. لأنه قبل كانوا أكو هواية أطباء لو دكاترة ما يشتغلون لا ممارسين ولا طبابة، بس يسوون evaluations فقط، تقييم فقط للحوادث. قالوا هذا بعد ما يصير، لأنه بعدين رواتبه كلها تجي من الانشورنس، هو مو طبيب بس دا يمارس كطبيب، ممنوع. بعد لازم يكون طبيب دا يمارس شغله، مو بس يسوي تقييم بأنه هو عنده يعني لو يدرس بالكلية بالجامعة، لو يدخل دورات تثقيفية، لأنه هو لازم وأبديتس لازم للأطباء. فهاي واحدة من الأشياء اللي هم تغيرت بال20. Yes. Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's good, but they're just kind of working around it, I guess.
I mean, yeah.
طبعا اكو شيء بفوائد بمضار طبعا.
Sure, it's good. It's definitely good.
Yeah.
Now, another interesting thing that happens is when we get sort of these partial denials. Lawrence, you've seen these, where they'll say, well, we don't think your leg needs additional treatment, but maybe your back does, or vice versa, right? We don't think your back needs additional treatment, but your leg does. What do you think of those, Lawrence? I find those interesting.
I guess they're not as bad as a complete cutoff, but
what happens when you're a provider, right? A medical provider, a doctor, and you get this letter saying, no longer will we pay for your leg, right, or your back,
and you are still injured,
and the doctor is in a position now, right? Because he's got a patient who's saying, well, I need treatment for both parts of my body, right? So the patient is telling you one thing. You evaluate the patient and you go, yeah, you need treatment for both of those things. But now the doctor is supposed to do these services and only get paid for half? That puts the doctor in a kind of a tricky spot. So that happens sometimes as well.
مرات التقارير تجي نص ونص، بأنه الجزء من الجسم ما يحتاج بعد أي علاج، والجزء الآخر يحتاج علاج. هذا التقرير يروح للطبيب مالتك، الأخصائي اللي تشوفه دائما. شو يسوي يعني؟ يعالجك الجزء والجزء لا ما يعالجك.
هو شيء
بالضبط، هو شيء مرتبط بشيء.
You know what the worst part is about this? Some doctors, after they stop getting paid, will stop treating. So now my client, he calls us and says, hey, I was treating with the same doctor for 6-7 months. The insurance company cut me off. They're no longer paying, and the doctor doesn't want to see me anymore. So now what are they supposed to do? They have to.
They get their money.
Well, yeah, they have been getting paid up to this point, and then the insurance company says, okay, effective, February 1st, we're going to stop paying, and the doctor no longer wants to treat that person. So now, now the client has to find a new doctor essentially 6 months into the case.
Right.
And I don't know. It doesn't seem like a great process to me.
And it's difficult too. I can understand a physician's perspective on this, right? Like if you're running a business.
I'm talking about from our client's perspective.
Oh, for sure. No,
right.
I sympathize for sure with the injured parties. I'm just saying, I also understand why the doctors will refuse to treat them, because if you I mean, if you're a doctor, right, you're running a medical practice.
Yeah, it's a
What do
business
you
at the end
do?
of the day,
It's a business.
essentially.
You have to pay your employees.
Right.
I mean, Lawrence, you have
No,
employees.
I didn't say
Yeah.
I'm putting any blame on them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know.
I'm just saying from the client standpoint, it can get
Just
very
as example.
very frustrating.
Absolutely.
Right? It can get very frustrating if you have to change your doctors after 8 months or a year into a case.
And sometimes they can't find one.
And
And
sometimes
that's great for the insurance company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because guess what? If they're not treating anymore because their doctor stops paying them, guess what? Now they don't have to pay any bills.
And it limits their liability now. The insurance
هسه
company's
شلون انت
liability.
بالنسبه لدوركم انتم؟
اوكي سخل
الترجمه هذه بعدين
بالضبط.
يعني
النقطة تجي وين؟ بأنه مرات مني الانشورنس تدز الرسالة للطبيب بأنه هذا الشخص بعد ما يحتاج الانشورنس راح توقف دفع للطبيب. هنا تجي المشكلة. الطبيب هم له حق، الطبيب هم عنده عيادة ومصاريفه والويا اللي يشتغلون كلهم، يعني هم يريد مصاريفه، فيقول مع الأسف أنا بعد ما أقدر أشوف هذا المريض. يرجعون يخابرونه لأنه
اللي خابرك المريض
إيه؟ يقول الطبيب بعد ما يجي يشوفني، حق الطبيب لأنه شو يسوي؟ احنا هنا نجي بدورنا
قاتلون
بالضبط. Exactly.
Then you will fight.
We begin fighting
for sure.
Client.
For
yes.
sure.
If the doctor doesn't want to see him anymore, so we try to refer him to another doctor.
Yeah, I mean, we can always can always work with people if they're trying to find places in their city or wherever, and they can't find anyone. We can try and assist. But for the most part, I mean, at the end of the day, we want them to get with whoever they're comfortable with.
Yeah. John, I do want to discuss the benefits of having a lawyer during this time.
Yes.
During the IME time.
So that's a really
and I have
really
a couple
good point.
points. And I'll let you chime in. We didn't talk about this earlier.
No,
I just throw it out there. What do you think don't look at my notes. What do you think the benefits are of having a good car accident lawyer by your side during the time of the IME?
Lawrence, even if I wanted to look at your notes, I can't read your handwriting. But it's actually incredibly helpful. So I'm going to say, at least from my perspective, one thing that you have when you have an attorney and you have a denial is the attorney can reach out to the providers and assure them that you still have an ongoing claim, right? So the number one thing from my perspective is if I'm a client, I call my attorney and say, oh my gosh, I got this letter. They're saying they won't pay. My doctor's saying they won't pay. The first thing I can do as an attorney for my client, I can just call the doctor and say, hey, I just want to let you know. Or I want to ask you, do you think the client's still injured? And if he says yes, I said, well, then listen, if you think he's injured, my client thinks he's injured, that's good enough for me. I will pursue a case. We will file a complaint as needed, okay, against the insurance company if we can't change their minds. And there are ways that we can go into how we can change their minds, maybe. But if we can't change their mind, we can file a case, and then we can essentially protect your bill as a physician, okay, as part of our client's case. So our client may be owed for various things, maybe lost wages, assistance around the house, whatever it may be. But the physicians, we actually protect their bills in our cases as well, right? And so I will say to a client, I'll say, listen, as long as you've got us here, we're going to protect all your claims. That includes your medical, that includes the wage loss, that includes pain and suffering, if it's applicable, right? And so the major benefit is you'll be able to continue treating knowing that the lawyer is going to back you up.
من الانشورنس يدزك للطبيب، أحسن شيء عندك هو كسند عندك محامي. هاي أهم شيء.
هذا أول شيء. هذا
أهم شيء عندك محامي. هواية لأنه هم هدفهم بأنه يريدون يوقفون العلاج على المصاب. أكثرية الجالية مالتنا تقول أنا بعد ما أروح أخاف أنا من يدفع بعدين وشلون، صح لا مو صحيح؟ بس إحنا نجي يس وحقهم هم. بس من عندك أنت محامي، المحامي أولا من يعرف أنت تجي التقارير إنه أول واحد يعرف هو المحامي بأنه أنت الانشورنس مالتك وقفت كل المصاريف الطبابة عليك، مو بس الطبابة، معناته المساعدات البيتية والرواتب وكل شيء تحتاجه، هذا كله وقف. أكو عدة يعني
قضايا.
لا عده مراحل نقدر يعني نحكي ويا الانشورنس. بس واحده من عندها المحامي اول شيء راح يسوي، الطبيب يقول انا ما اريد اشوفك، منو يدفع لي؟ اللي احنا نقدر نسوي نخابر الطبيب، نقول له بانه انت هل تعتقد هذا الشخص مصاب؟ اذا قال نعم وفعلا احنا الزبون مالتنا مصاب، بنقول له بانه احنا راح
تضمنون فلوسه
بالضبط، نضمن باللات مالته،
نعم.
الفواتير مالته،
صح.
اوكي، نضمن هي يدز لنا اياها كلها تنضم بالفايلات، حتى احنا ذاك الوقت رأسا نرفع قضيه ضد الانشورنس، حتى لانه التقارير الطبيه مال الطبيب والزبون نفسه والمحامي واقف، كلهم ضد الانشورنس. فبهيك حاله يعني
تاخذون
بالضبط. يس.
So that was actually part of my second pointer, but I'll start off with my first one.
All right.
Is I assume I've never been through the process, thankfully, but I assume that if you were going to an IME exam, you probably want to talk to someone about it, right? So you want to ask them, what is it? What should I expect? What should I answer? Remember, our clients go there without us usually. I mean, we've been to IMEs,
sure,
but usually client goes there on his own.
Yeah.
So the insurance company knows that, the doctor knows that. So oftentimes I've had the doctors ask questions that they should not be asking my clients. Exactly. So one word of advice, hopefully you have a lawyer for this, but if you don't, you go to an IME, just anything that's being asked, only answer questions about your medical. You know, there's no reason to answer any questions about which person is helping you around the house, or which days you're going to your friend's house, or stuff like that. Keep it on track, because they will ask you. They know that you're not in the presence of your lawyer, and they will try to ask you some questions, and those answers will go in their report.
Yep. واحدة من الأشياء اللي جدا جدا مهمة، احنا قلنا إذا راحوا للطبيب مال الانشورنس، بس اكو اشياء قبل ما يروحون للطبيب الانشورنس الزبون لازم يعرفها، لو المتأذي لازم يعرفها. اللي عنده محامي، المحامي راح يتصل به قبل فترة ويخبره شنو الأشياء اللي يقدر يقولها والأشياء اللي ماكو داعي يقولها.
And exactly what to expect from start to finish. That way, you know, you're not going in blind. It kind of makes our clients feel a little bit more comfortable too.
بالضبط. مو تروح يعني انت ما تعرف كل شيء، راح تطب في شيء في مكان انت ما تعرف ايش راح يسووا لك اصلا. فالمحامي راح يقول لك من الالف الى الياء بالضبط، من تروح لهناك ايش وقت تروح، من توصل شو تسوي، شو تقول، شنو تقول ايه، شنو تقول لا، شنو تقبل، شنو ترفض. هاي الاشياء كلها اللي ما عنده محامي ما يعرف، ويروح هناك
مثل واحد اعمى.
بالضبط تخش في مكان يعني، وهاي كلها اذا انت ما تعرف وتجاوب وتسوي اشياء بالضبط ضدك. هوايه اكو اشياء يسالك، مثلا يقول لك مثلا منو دا يساعدك بالبيت، ما له علاقه هو منو دا يساعدك بالبيت، ماكو داعي تجاوبه. لو مثلا كم مره تروح للطبيب، هاي اشياء ما لها علاقه،
يعني كلها هذه ما لها علاقه
بالضبط. فلذلك احنا نوصي الزبائن مالتنا الكلاينت بانه اكو اشياء الف باء تاء ثاء نمشي بيها، بانه انت قبل ما تروح للطبيب الانشورنس ايش لازم تسوي. دائما شوف لك محامي، مثل ما قلنا فوق ال 95% من التقارير تجي ضد الزبون، فشوف لك محامي قبل ما تروح احسن، مو ورا ما تروح.
زين، من يجون يمكم شنو رقم تليفونكم؟
248-702-6641.
And you know what else? Sorry, the insurance companies are notorious for doing surveillance on the same day as the IME. So they probably will be out there surveilling you going in and going out, and they'll probably follow you for the rest of the day. So just
well, you know what? You know why that is? Because they know exactly where you're going to be and what time you're going to be there.
أكثر أهل الإنشورنس يسوون مراقبة على الشخص الزبون، واللي يكون هو ذاك خاصة هذاك النهار، لأن هي الانشورنس دازته وتعرف وين راح يروح، ويعرفون ساعة بيش راح يروح وساعة بيش
طريقة مشية الشيء
شلون تمشي، شلون تطلع من السيارة، تمشي بالعكازة لو ما تمشي، وصايرة هواية. يجي الزبون لابس الحزام ولابس العكازة ولابس
أول ما يصعد السيارة ينزع.
لا ظل لابسها، قول ظل لابسها، وصل للبيت طب شوية طلع لابس غير شكل ورايح للمطعم ورايح، يعني فديروا بالكم.
ده يشيل وزن.
Yes. We see a lot of videos.
Yep.
And funny ones too.
So the second thing I had here that's the advantage of having a lawyer during this time. So let's say you go to IME, you get a letter in the mail saying that from the insurance company saying that you need no more medical treatment, they're closing your claim as of this date. What do most people do with that? If you're not in this field, most people will say, "Oh, I guess the insurance company closed my claim. I cannot treat anymore."
That's right.
They take the letter, they throw it in the garbage, and they stop treating.
Yeah.
Even though they need more treatment, they think this is the law. They think that they can't treat anymore.
Right.
And when they bring it to us, I'll tell them exactly what the letter means. Not much, but and so that's another thing. So most people that get this letter will just stop treating. They'll do what the insurance company says. But don't do that.
No.
If you're still injured, you still need more treatment, come to us. We have a 98% success rate on these cases. So you're not out of options.
You are educated in them now.
Yes.
Well, I mean, consider this: if over 90% of if over 90% of IMEs are end up in a denial of the claim, and yet we are successful in fighting 98% of those, then think about how many of those doctors' opinions at the end of the day are probably wrong. I mean, there's got to be a huge number of them.
خاصة احنا بالجالية مالتنا ما يدا اقول نخاف من كل شيء، بس نخاف بس ونريد نمشي هذا ايش قال وشلون وش راح نسوي، صح لو مو صحيح؟
تجي له رسالة يرجف
ومين رسالة من الانشورنس، انتهى الموضوع
خلاص.
اي
شرطة.
اي رأسا اخذ الصديقة لو شيرة والهي قال له لا عندك يعني ممنوع بعد تتعالج، مكتوب بعد ما يصير، انت زين صرت زين، هو مو زين، ما صاير زين بس يخاف.
And they'll put a statute in there. They'll put a Michigan statute in there about what they're relying on and stuff like that. And you look at it and it looks kind of scary.
هو يشوف كأنه من دولة يعني.
بالضبط، لأنه يحطونها من جزء من القانون هناك وأرقام، للزبون تخوف هي. حتى لو أنا ومو شغلي وأشوف هيك شيء يعني واحد يرتبك.
حتى لو للحظات. المهم أنه يرتبك.
صحيح. الزبون شو يسوي؟ يوقف كل شيء بعد ما يروح وهو متضرر ويقول خلص ويذب الورقه بالزباله لانه ما يريد يشوفها بعد منه. واحنا خاصه بنريد ننظف كل شيء ينذب، والمفروض كل شيء احنا نحتفظ به، هاي اهم شيء. زين النقطه وين نجي بانه احنا قلنا فوق ال 95% من هاي التقارير تجي ضد الزبون، ولحد اليوم كم احنا قضيه مشتغلين عليها ونجاحنا 98%
بالقضايا اللي هم يرفضوها
فهذا يبين بانه هذا الطبيب اللي يشوفك بانه بس للايفالويشن، بس للتقييم، بانه هاي تقاريرهم هي مو صحيحه،
كلها فالص،
غلط. فرجاء نشوف محامي ومحامي يقدر يوقف وياك. احنا من نشوف هاي نقول لك نهدي ونقول لك شو راح تسوي وشنو الخطوات اللي تاخذها وراها. هاي فشي جدا مهم،
وهذا الحلو
بالضبط.
This is a huge windfall for the insurance companies. So imagine how much money they are saving from people that get the letter and say, "Oh, I guess my case is done. I can no longer treat." And they stop treating.
So can they still treat? if they get a denial letter, are they allowed to still treat?
Well, it's going to be up to them and their doctor, but I can tell you when we file a lawsuit against the insurance company for denied claims, we're 98% successful.
That's right.
I can tell you that.
So they can. I mean, at the end of the day, right?
They can.
You can treat, and there is a risk. There's a denial, right? So the insurance company is going to want to pay voluntarily, but just because the insurance company says it is so does not make it so.
And I think the reason is they just save so much money doing this. A lot of people will just listen to that letter. Okay, I guess I'm done. And now the insurance company doesn't have to pay another $1, on those cases. Imagine the same case goes in through and we settle it for $100,000. If they never pursued the claim, they would have saved that
That's
whole,
right.
that whole amount.
تحصل حتى بالناس الأذكياء يعني همينة.
بالضبط. وكل تقريبا كل قضية يدزون الشخص إلى هذا الفحص الطبي المستقل.
نعم.
هو مو مستقل طبعا.
نعم فعلا لأنه تابع لهم.
بالضبط. من تجي هذا التقرير مو معناته أنت ما تقدر بعد تتعالج. الانشورنس تريدك ما تتعالج حتى تحتفظ بالمصاريف مالتها.
And it works.
ويشتغل هواية ناس تخاف وبعد ما تروح. بينما اكو هواية قضايا الناس تبقى تروح وتشتغل وتروح وتكمل طبابتها ونحصل بالفوق 100,000 للقضية همينة.
يعني هو
لأنه هاي
بتصور ما يحصلوا
بالضبط ويوقف. وهاي همينة تعتمد أنت التقارير هاي الطبية للجزء الآخر من القضية. أنت عندك جزء آخر من القضية بأنه العطل ضرر. لازم تبين بأنه أنت متضرر. زين إذا توقف أنت ما راح تبين أنت متضرر.
I actually had a denied claim one time that we filed a lawsuit against the insurance company. We're not going to say who it is, but we filed a lawsuit against one of the big insurance companies, and they paid after denial, after the doctor said you need no more treatment, after they stopped paying all bills. They paid on the case $450,000 on a denied claim.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
That means the law firm is smart.
I mean, almost every case ends up with some kind of IME denial. And that's the crazy thing. Apparently, every single case, somehow they've managed to find a doctor who says either it's not related to an accident or they're completely fine. And that's a little bit shocking, right? How is it you're always able to find someone to say that they're fine?
واحدة من القضايا صار عندها من التقييم مالته. التقييم مالته وقفوه من وراء الانشورنس من طبيب الانشورنس ومشينا ويا الزبون وبقى يتعالج واحنا رفعنا القضية ومعناته وراء 6 أشهر احنا وراء 1.5 سنة سنتين تقريبا. سوينا تسوية على هاي القضية فوق 450,000.
هذه وهي مرفوضة.
وهي هاي مرفوضة.
So it didn't even have to go to trial. This was a settlement. We went through.
هذا بس settle. رايحة بعد يجوز.
هاي فقط سوينا تسوية. أصلاً ما رحنا للمحكمة العليا ما صعدناها. وأنت يعني أنت كل واحد يشوف بأنه 99 لو 95 لو بال90% القضايا تجي كلها مرفوضة بأنه أنت صرت زين. همنا ما معقول. أكو فشي غلط.
So right. Lawrence, what do you think then? If you've got a case and the sole reason for the insurance company's not paying is an IME denial, I mean, what do you think? Does that have much effect on the settlement?
On the settlement, no, not in my opinion.
I don't think so either. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that
everyone litigates different, but in my opinion, I don't give too much weight to the IME denials.
See, and I don't either. And I feel like even the defense attorneys know this because when they've got a case and they're like, well, we've got an IME denial. I'm looking at them like, and what else? Yeah.
It's usually like they'll have a list of issues and then they'll be like, and we have an IME denial too.
Yeah, exactly.
من الصير المحكمة لو صار الإفادة الطرف المحامي مال الانشورنس طبعا يجيب الأشياء اللي حتى لو تقلل قيمة القضية لو توقف القضية. فواحدة من النقاط يقول له أنا عندي الانتبندنت ميديكال اكزام اللي هو الفحص الطبي المستقل التقرير ومرفوض. واحنا نقول وبعدين وشو يعني شنو بعدين يعني لأنه هي كل هذا الرفض يعني مو فشي جديد هذا بالنسبة لنا. هاي فشي يعني
الخبرة
بالضبط.
كل هالكيسات تجي نفس الشيء.
بالضبط. Exactly.
Yeah. Something is up, right? Something is up.
Yeah.
Something is up.
Now I have to ask though, what do you think about? I think we both agree. The effect on a settlement is probably pretty minimal. But what about if there's an IME and they're putting that in front of a jury? What's your thought?
I mean, it kind of goes back to the question I had for Sahar. I mean, if you're a jury,
right,
and you hear testimony from a doctor that's been treating one of our clients for the last year and a half, right? And then you also hear testimony from a doctor who saw our client one time for 10 minutes.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Usually have pretty good luck with those doctors.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that the effect is usually minimal, but I will say with one big caveat, it does depend on your jury. I think, in my opinion, it depends on who you get, because you never know who those random 6 people are that's on your jury.
And I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
When you,
question.
Yes. when you are in court and you depose the doctor who saw the client for a year.
Yes.
And you depose the doctor who saw him for 10 minutes.
Right.
The 10 minutes what will he say?
Mm-hmm.
And the other doctor, he will have all the documents will support.
I can tell
client.
you. I can tell you exactly what he'll say. He'll say, well, I was provided a set of information from such and such insurance company. I reviewed that information. I met with the client. I did not establish a relationship. And in my professional opinion, I do not believe their accidents are related to their injuries are related to the motor vehicle accident. That's what they'll usually say. The alternative is, I reviewed it and I think they should have been healed by the time they've come to me. Those are their 2 responses. And I especially like the second one, that they should have been healed, because I love it when they have a crystal ball in their office that they're able to look through and see into the past and say, yeah, they should have been healed 6 months ago. I love those.
Yeah. Last words, Mr.
You know which doctor I'll bet on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Last words.
No, hopefully this was a good show. So hopefully it's informational. Hopefully the listeners are not going through this process alone.
Right.
So
they have to.
Please don't go through this process alone. Give us a call. Everything is free until we win.
Yes.
So don't have to worry about paying us for anything up until we get you a settlement. So give us a call. It doesn't cost you anything, and we'll walk you through it. And even if we don't pursue the claim, at least you have someone that was by your side during this process. Even if we don't go forward, you don't want to go forward, we're absolutely fine with that. Mm-hmm. But have someone in your corner while you're going through this.
Mr. Shrodder.
Thanks so much for having us.
آخر كلمات قوليها.
نتمنى بأنه المستمعين استفادوا من هذا الكلام كله وشوفوا دائما محامي وياكم. ماكو داعي تروحون وحدكم إلى فشي أنتم بدأ تعرف ما راح تعرفون شو راح تسوون. أحسن شيء عندك محامي حتى لو ما تريد تمشي بالقضية، بس إذا تريد تاخذ استشارة. الاستشارة مجانية. اتصلوا بنا للمكتب. رقم المكتب 248-702-6641. وشكرا.
Also, just so the listeners know, we are open. We're open 24 hours a day. So if they have a new accident, they can always call in at any time during the day.
يقدرون يخابرون أي وقت 24 ساعة. طبعا هم موجودين على رقمهم اللي هو 248-702-6641. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much.
قاجي.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shrodder.
Thank you so much for having us.
أهلا وسهلا.
مستمعينا الأكارم، مشاهدينا الأعزاء، كنا مع برنامج المحامي لورنس قاجي. أي واحد عنده أي سؤال استفسار يقدر يتصل بيهم على 248-702-6641. هم 24 ساعة يجاوبوكم، وأيضا استشاراتهم كلها مجانية. ومثل ما قلنا، أي كيس عندك أنت بالنسبة لك ما راح تدفع ولا دولار واحد إلى أن يخلص ويصير سيتل الكيس. ذاك الوقت أنت بالنسبة لك أنت راح تأخذ، مو أنت راح تدفع. شكرا جزيلا.